Hello, our project is M1504 Implement support for missing XML HTTP request APIs. Our OSS project involved implementing override MIME type and override charset API. The current project involves 3 steps. The first step is to implement the specified behavior for final MIME type and final charset. Final MIME type is the override MIME type unless that is null, in which case it is the response MIME type. The final charset is the override charset unless that is null, in which it is response charset. Let's look into the code. This is a pull request for the first task. We have added 2 helper methods, final charset and final MIME type. So the final charset is override charset if it is not null. Otherwise, it is the response charset which is obtained from the content type header. Similarly, the final MIME type is the override MIME type if it is not null. Otherwise, it is the response MIME type which is obtained from content type header. Also, we have added support for final charset in text response. So basically, final underscore charset helper method is being called here, and the encoding is the final charset that is returned if it is not null. Otherwise, it is set to UTF-8. Another task was to add support for with credentials API. As discussed with Josh, the first subtask was not to be implemented. So moving on to the other subtask, we had to implement basic network level support in order to conditionally exclude cookies from the HTTP request. So let's move on to the pull request. So for this, we have added a credentials flag variable in load data structure which is present in lib.rs. As you can see, it has been set to true by default. The with credentials flag is set for cross-origin request to the with credentials attribute present in XML HTTP request.rs. So let's move on and look at the use of this flag. The credentials flag, when it is set to true, only then we add cookies to the current request from the cookie jar. In order to access the load data field inside this function, we have added load data as a parameter to this function. Similarly, if the credentials flag is set to true, only then we set the cookies from the response into the cookie jar. Also, in order to access the load data field inside this function, we have added it as a parameter to process response headers. The pull requests for these 2 tasks have been merged successfully.
Moving on, currently Servo has support only for text and JSON response types. So our next task was to implement support for the document response types. So following is the spec for a document response type, and here are our corresponding changes for the document response type. As shown here, in the response method, we check the request response type whether it's document. So if it's a document, if the request response type is a document, we handle it as a document response and we call the get response XML method. Inside the get response XML method, we check whether we have a document response object which is non-null, in which case it was earlier set. So if it is non-null, then we directly return it. Else we call the document response method shown here to basically construct the response document object. Here is our implementation of the document response method. So basically we have handled 2 different content types. One is text HTML and one is all other content types which end in XML. So herein we check the final MIME type and we compare it against text HTML or a MIME or a content type which ends in XML. And we invoke the corresponding method for each of these content types. So as shown here, we have invoked the method for text HTML content type over here, and we've invoked the method for the XML for the MIME types ending in XML over here. In each of these content types, we implement the specific steps related to these content types. So the spec shows that if the final MIME type is text HTML, we perform the following steps from 1 to 5, and otherwise if it ends in XML, then we perform 0.7. So as shown here, in HTML we have created a document, and we have parsed the response body as response body into the document. Similarly, for XML, we have again constructed a document, and we have parsed the response text as an XML document. Finally, as the last step shows, after constructing the document object, we set response XML to this document. So as shown in line 758, we have set the response XML to this newly created document, so that future calls to response XML can directly return this document and not repeat the entire process. Thank you.